Hello and welcome to the Joyful Rebels podcast. We've got Claire and Donna Thomas here, your mother-daughter duo, and we are excited to be back with our first full episode since June. It's been a while. Busy summer over here. A
Mm,
lot has happened this summer. So we moderated our private Facebook group about boosting confidence with over
mhm.
100 women. So that was really cool. We were able to trial some activities and have conversations that will show up again in this podcast. Uh, we also got to see each other in
Yeah, right?
person.
That was the best part.
uh, a whole month of fun times together, which was, it definitely filled my cup. Our photo shoot. So if you listen to our mini episode in the car, we got to have our first professional photo shoot of the Joyful Rebels. So you might have seen some of those pictures already thrown out there on social media, but it was a lot of fun. And I feel like if you've seen any of the photos, like that's us. Like,
Yeah,
the
that was so fun.
silliness, the lightness, all of that. That was a lot of fun.
And we're
Uh,
cute. So it was nice to get that in it's captured. I'm kidding. Not kidding. But it was fun because it was not only did we have a good time just getting the pictures taken, knowing that we wanted professional shots, but who gets to do that with their grown kid? Like let's do a photo shoot. Like that's so I never would have dreamed that as a young mom coming up that I was like, I get to do these things with my adult kids and Claire specifically. That was so much fun that it makes me dream bigger because I
mm,
didn't know some of those things were possible. And that might seem simple to some of you guys listening, but it is possible. And growth is possible and exploring life is possible. And I love doing it with you. So that was fun that was captured on those great photos. So, and you are adorable. So there's
well,
that.
I said I haven't had pictures taken since my high school senior pictures, so that are still hanging up in your hallway. So
Yeah,
it was definitely a
definitely.
throwback, throwback to those. Um, yeah, lots of new things going on. I got some new ink if you're watching on YouTube. And I have new plants in the background. I feel like I have to say that. I have a friend who watches and she goes, every time I watch your YouTubes, you added a new plant. So like pretty soon it's gonna be a Where's Waldo with all the lush greenery behind me.
Like,
Um, but we did have one topic that kept coming up. We were able to have in-person chats that were just talking about our foundations as the Joyful Rebels, where we're at now, where we want to take this thing in the future as we grow. And one topic kept coming back up, we kept returning to, and it's nothing that we're a stranger to because we based our first course off of it, but it's this idea of knowing yourself, the importance of knowing yourself. So, Mom, how have you found this topic showing up for you recently?
well, number one, I want to say that we came around to that type of language just from conversation and to know that there is legit research out there that really digs into it and explains why it is a thing, feels really affirming and confirming that they're like, oh no, this is a thing and it is a cornerstone awareness, behavior, lifestyle for living a life well lived, which that is the basis for Joyful Rebel. It's not having your life happen to you. It's being a participant, a joyful participant as we roll through the different chapters, the different ways that I'll just say it, as we age, as we get older, wiser, have different life instances happen to us. I have plenty of people that I'm in contact with that their language is that life is happening to them.
Mhm.
And they are, the language is like, oh, and getting older and how it's just terrible. And there are some things that do change with our bodies and our health and some of those things, but we have so much more input into that. And I want to live joyfully. I don't want to take any chapter that I'm in and be like, well, that's a throwaway. I'll just wait. Like, and I thought that initially when you guys were little, like it's such an intense stage if you're a mom and you're raising littles. Like sometimes I felt like it was never going to end. But you get a chance to shift and go like, this is a blip on the screen. And it is so quickly going by. To find joy in everything is really the way to go, because I feel like I've had pockets of time where I didn't feel that way. And just the overriding urge, desire, and momentum to keep going forward and to share that is the basis for Joyful Rebels. So it has been showing up for me. And I love that when we pick a topic for the week and I spend a minimal amount of time thinking about it, all of a sudden it's a priority in my life and I focus on it, whether it's been something that is or already top of mind or it's an issue for me. No, no, no. Whatever the topic is, you guys listening, that doesn't mean you have to have that has to be on your radar. But just for a little bit, because we're talking about it, put it on your radar and go and examine it, because it is the overall arc is knowing yourself isn't a nice to have. It's an essential. It's an essential, and research confirms it and uses that language. It is essential to connect the dots with what has happened with you, to the present time and how we behave and how we think and feel. And if I don't want to live being driven by my emotions, then I need to figure them out and understand them a little bit more and who I am in this stage of my life. So it showed up in two different ways that are big, and I'll just keep it really short here, but both personally and professionally. That's how it's showing up for me, knowing myself. And knowing myself personally, that I found that if you guys are raising young kids and you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to raise them and then I'll be done and then I'll have my life, the second half will start. That's not how it's looking for me, because that's the message I got when I was growing up. That was super old school. You might call it that. Like, and grandmas would be like, I'm just going to feed you butter and ice cream and just be indulgent. I do not find that to be a place where I'm at. I had the great fortune to have Claire having your kids in person and being able to support the good ways that you're trying to raise them, not be counterproductive and be like, I'm going to break all the rules. We're going to be like naughty. Like, I want to say yes as much as I can, but that supports your parenting because you're the one in charge. I also have on the ground here, I have, I have another daughter, two little ones that I watch a few times a week. I never thought I'd be doing that ever, with a 50-hour a week, corporate job and grad school and all that. And here I am watching little kids again. So I get a chance to do it all over again, and to be present. So you never know where your life's going to take you. So you have to be prepared. So I'm getting a chance to revisit some of the ways and that I thought parenting looked, being older and letting someone else be the lead parent and being supportive. These are important roles in the family, because a core value for me is my family. I mean, I kind of think we'd be monsters if at some point you weren't like, yeah, my family's important, but I am really trying to dial in and stay there. So this is really important and present. So it's showing up there. Another way that it's showing up is professionally. And I've been in the fitness industry for a long time, over 30 years. And I know I'm in the fourth quarter. I'm okay with being in the fourth quarter. I love it that there's new people that are coming in. But here's the crux of it. If I want to live joyfully and I'm ending a season at some point, and it could be another 5 years, it could be 6 months, who knows, that I want to segue into the next chapter happy and being interested about other things, not because I can't do that anymore, because I can't do physical stuff, because I'll be an athlete all the way up through me doing balloon volleyball in the old people's home. I will be spiking it like, like on Meet the Parents, like that'll be me. But I find things that I'm more interested in, that take my focus, and I'm not mourning the things that I can't do. Things just change, and that is a joyful way to look at life. I've had a great run, and the things that I used to care about really deeply, sometimes too much, that took over my life, do not. I'm not that concerned about that. I have things that I'm hopeful for the future, so I can still live in both places more balanced,
Mm.
and that is a gift, because there's a lot of occupations and just professions that serve different ages. Like there's some things, like there's a reason that people like get a chance to retire at 65 or whatever the number is these days. You want to be healthy to live the rest of your life, to do the stuff you want to do. And that is not a place to fear. I'm learning it's a place like that's coveted and amazing, and I want to stay healthy for it. So I get a chance to examine all that stuff. And the more I know myself, I can walk through these chapters and love them, understand them for what they were, and appreciate with gratitude the gifts that they've given me.
Mm. I like how you talk about really looking to the future, because I think that's really what is sticking out for me, is that when we're talking about getting to know yourself, it's so that you can create the life that you want. And I saw this woman talking, and she's in her 70s, and she was saying, when we're younger and we're, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want your career to be? But she goes, even when you're in your 40s and 50s, then are you thinking about what do I want to do when I'm 70? And that seems to be missing from the conversation a lot of the
Mhm.
time. But we're saying, wherever you're at right now, where do you want to be in the future? And before you can have that conversation, you need to know yourself. There are some things to examine from your past, but you need to take stake in where you're at now. We've had an episode before about checking in, but if you want to create the life that you want, you need to be able to know yourself. So that's one of the big whys and why we're going to keep talking about this topic. And we're going to see it weaved through several of the upcoming episodes because it's just so huge. And side note, I do want to say, Mom, I really do appreciate how you respect and support my parenting decisions. It 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 warms my heart and it makes everything a lot easier to have a parent that does support and not, do the opposite of the parenting, the typical maybe quote unquote grandma thing. So that's awesome. But this idea of knowing yourself, right? Like we didn't make this up. And I think it was Socrates who said an unexamined life is not worth living, which is,
Mm.
extreme. But this has been around since the philosophers in Greek and Roman times. And knowing yourself, we don't just mean, what's my favorite flavor of ice cream or what's my favorite color, which I actually had to think about. Maybe that's kind of funny as an adult, but my son asked me this, what's your favorite color? And I was like, oh, it's just something I hadn't thought about in a while. I was like, I guess blue. Okay, cool. But it's even deeper than that. It's understanding what we value, right? You've heard us talk about core values before. What your strengths are, what you're struggling with, some things that we don't want to think about sometimes, or we've got the curtains over our eyes. But being able to identify that, shining the light on it, that awareness. Whoa, hey, awareness light turns on. That's the only time we're able to do something about it. Even what our hopes are. When we don't reflect and get to know ourselves, we can feel like we lack any control. And Mom, you talked about a little bit about you're kind of at the whims of your emotions. And if you don't have stakes in the ground and know what you stand for, who you are, what you're working on, if you're not clear on that, then you might find yourself just reacting. And we talk about that before, and we talked about meditation and how we can take yoga off our mat. That, you know, I want to be able to have that pause between when something happens to me, and I want to be able to respond thoughtfully instead of just knee jerk reactions all the time. And my example is always traffic. If someone cuts you off, or you just like yelling, that reaction time. So by getting clear on who we are able then to respond instead of just react. Um, do you ever feel like you're on autopilot or just going through the motions? And I know for me, I just came back, right? So I spent the summer in Illinois. I came back, and the next day my kids went to school. Two of my three kids went to school. But it's still so hot outside that it feels like summer. I feel like I'm in this weird twilight transition zone. And I'm not going to lie, it felt like my head was kind of blowing in the wind, like very untethered. And so I thought, I don't feel grounded. This is a good time to do a check-in of where I'm at right now. So if anyone listening, if you're in that same kind of transition between summer to school year or any type of transition, then this is a good opportunity for you. Hey, where am I at right now? Take some stakes in it. Because then you're not just doing these unconscious decisions, right? Because honestly, you might be going through your day, and we'll talk about this at the end, but you might be doing things that you don't necessarily want to be doing. They're just a pattern that maybe served you in the past. It's not really serving you anymore until you open your eyes and notice what you're doing, what's important to you. And again, there's so many different pieces and parts of the puzzle of getting to know yourself. We're not going to get into all of it now, but until you get clear on that, you might feel untethered, like I was saying. It doesn't feel good
Mhm.
if you ever felt stuck or kind of you don't feel in control. And not that we can control everything, so don't don't quote me on saying that you can have, total control, but there are some things we can control, and the more we know ourselves, the more we can clarify our preferences, we can understand our patterns, we have more freedom. We give ourselves more choices. We might find that we're kinder to ourselves because we're aware, oh, I'm doing this pattern again. It's not just something that I'm doing. Oh, why did I do that? If you're asking yourself that. And lastly, getting to know yourself, and I mentioned this in the beginning, it's the first step if you want to make any changes. If you want to start planning out your life for when you're 70 years old or older, or if you want to make any positive change, you have to get clear on who you are now. So hopefully, if you're listening, and if you didn't already, you're like, yeah, it is essential that I know myself to be able to move forward in a way that aligns with who I am and what I want. So that's a lot. We're talking
Mm.
about why it's important. Mom, I wonder if there's any activities or tips that you have to start to scratch the surface of this.
Yes, I've got a couple of them for you, but I'm going to back up just a second because a couple of weeks ago in person, I did see James Clear, who is the noted author for Atomic Habits and how to change behavior. And he did start with you got to know yourself, and it's a foundational. It's a foundational. It's not just awareness. I would call it lifestyle. I don't even think that covers it, but it's a building block. It's a building block of so many things. And if he is really the one of the contemporary voices on behavior change and living a life that feels genuine and joyful and fun, like all of that, because you're doing the things that you want to do that serve you and that you value, it's to figure out what that is first off. So I just want to say that, we talk about these things to be in his presence, to hear him do it, to echo that and to expand on it. It feels good to know you're moving in the right direction. So any effort that you put toward knowing yourself, just know it's time well spent. You don't have to
Mhm.
have it figured out. And I want to say one last thing on that, that I'm not somebody, and Claire, you aren't either. We're not sitting around just examining our belly buttons just all day long. Like, I don't know, how do I know myself? What's happening? We have plenty of, we're thinking people. So we could be doing things and then we'll have a few moments. And I'm not going to mindlessly just scroll or mindlessly, I'm going to limit those things that don't do much for me. And I find I have all these pockets of time where I can move the needle and I can spend a little time being introspective. I have a few minutes to meditate then. That's the point, is that we want to open up all of the time that we have, which is our most precious commodity, and see that we can do this. It's not like we're piling on, we're giving you more things to do. Like everybody's got the same amount of time in a day. We're just going to use it a little bit differently. And so when it rises up on your priority, like this is something that's important to me, I want to get to know myself little by little, then you'll find the time. And it's little, maybe even just the time that it is to have a cup of coffee. So there's that. We'll come back to that. But if we're looking at getting to know yourself, there's a couple of fun ways to do that. One I think is fun. One is just interesting. Okay, I'll preface it by that. But here's one thing that you can do. And I had a good time doing this. It was interesting. And that is picture your perfect day, and done this a couple different times. I saw it in this research that will be, noted in the show notes, but also I've done it in yoga teacher training too, where you get a chance to, in this activity, you just map out what's your day look like? What's your day look like? And I looked at it from morning, middle of the day, and then evening. That's one way to operationally chunk it out, so it's not overwhelming. And you just pick all the things. If you could pick what you wanted to do for the whole day, what would it look like? And it wasn't about costs, and it wasn't about, you could get people into your world that, like transport them. So like there could be some fantasy in there. It's like, brainstorm, just what would it look like? And it's interesting to get a picture to see how are you actually living your life compared to what this perfect day would be like. So my wonder, and as we'll circle back to that later, how many of the things are you incorporating already? But actually sit down, do it like morning time. What would it look like from the moment you woke up until lunchtime to dinner, and then dinner and evening? And just see, are you living in a place that's aligned? And it's okay if you're not. I've had chunks of periods of my life where like a couple of the chunks of the day were right on. And then one of them was really off. And I'm thinking that's a great thing to celebrate, because then that's the thing that you put your attention on.
Mm.
That's the thing where if you looked at it, instead of just letting it happen, you could prepare for that a little bit differently. So you picture your perfect day. Okay. So that's one of them. The other one, which doesn't have as fun of a title, but think of it, I'm actually going to focus on my frustrations, not just let them happen to me and then be like, "Ugh." I'm going to actually take some time, sit down. And I like it. I've been drinking this mushroom coffee. You guys heard of this? So I don't drink it in the morning because I'll drink regular coffee then. But I like it. It is less caffeine, and it's the ceremony of sitting down with some warm beverage. Could be tea, could be whatever is your preference. And that's when I'm like, I'm going to sit down and just look at my frustrations for a little bit. And I like it because then it's not just driving my behavior, and I have this just feeling of like, ugh, Like that to me just feels like energy that's not controlled, and I just don't like it. It doesn't feel good. It drains me. And I ask myself a couple of questions. And one of them would be like, what is this moment trying to teach me? Because I do think the things that come back to frustrate me is like I get another swing at it. How can I do it differently this
Yeah.
time? Especially with parenting, especially with relationships with people. You get the same kind of person that's back in your world and you're like, ooh, this feels familiar. Great. What can I learn this time around? We're not meant to be perfect, but I think trying helps get us closer to a way that feels more organic and in alignment with what we value. And I don't know about you, I need several attempts at things, several.
Uh-huh.
And I'm in the middle of several attempts of a lot of things right now, but I look at it with some humor and some hope that this time I can try something a little bit differently instead of just what I learned, what I saw modeled, what I've done before. I get to create a new data point. That's essential. And that's me creating the life that I want to live. So what is this moment here to teach me? Another one is what old patterns might I be reenacting? I love that. If you're in a situation and it feels familiar, odds are for me, I've done it already.
Mm.
And here I am again. Am I getting myself in this position? What's happening here? And you step outside of it and you just kind of look at it. You're like, that's interesting. So if I can remove the judgment, because I
Mm.
wouldn't do that. I wouldn't judge anybody else listening, anybody else in my care or in my orbit. I wouldn't. But for me, if I'm not thoughtful about it, I can look at that and go like, why aren't you doing it differently? Blah, blah, blah. Like the inner critic comes up and I'm like, no, no, no. How is this pattern? Is there a pattern that's coming back? And for me, it's a lot of self-talk. I've had old self-talk that had been negative that I thought was humbling me. No, I just don't think it's helpful. I think that kind of stuff erodes your foundation. Didn't understand it. But if by asking the question, I got different insight. And then lastly, another question that we can ask ourselves is, gosh, is there any like fear or shame or any one of those really big feelings? Is that determining what I do? Some of that stuff, you guys, I trust if you come up with something big that keeps coming up and feels overwhelming, like there's always professional help. You can always dig into it a little bit deeper, but shine some light on it because that kind of stuff only grows and festers when it's in the dark and in the shadows. You bring it out, shine some light on it, bring some health to it, dismantle it, and life can go on, having used it as a lesson and to then not let it rule the rest of your life. That is absolutely a truth. So the final piece of looking at your frustrations, don't end there. Finish up any 5-minute mushroom coffee session that you're doing that with a moment of gratitude. Maybe a journal entry. I find if I say it out loud, that has more power for me. Not just I'm gonna, because I don't want to think my way out of situations. I don't know, that doesn't work for me. I have to say it out loud. I have to transfer it down on paper. It enters a different place in my brain. One thing that I'm grateful for the situations that I'm in. And an easy one is, gosh, they've taught me some lessons that I get to jump off from to this next place I'm going to. So end with some gratitude on that. Okay, that's a lot. You're gonna paint your perfect day, look at your frustrations, a couple bookends there, but still a really great way to take things from way up high and at least drop the ceiling down a little bit so that we get a little bit more, distill it down so it's more personal and more specific. Is that making some sense, Claire?
Yeah, and I think as we wrap up here, I just want to reiterate something you said earlier that any work and any time you're putting towards these topics of getting to know yourself is time well spent. And as I had mentioned, this is something that it's going to be a thread that's woven into many different episodes because we know it to be essential, a necessary part of living a joyful life. And so even if it does feel, oh, tip of the iceberg, your 5 minutes drinking your mushroom coffee or whatever coffee, what warm drink you're drinking. So to bring it home, that's what you're going to do. You can pick facing your frustrations if that sounds interesting to you. Again, taking that objective look and asking those really cool questions like, wait, this has showed up before. What lesson is this trying to teach me? Or, hey, I get another opportunity to deal with this. I do like that shifting your mindset when something potentially frustrating is showing up again. or you're going to picture your perfect day. So if you've got 5 minutes this week, here's what you're going to do. Pick out 4 to 5 things. And mom, I like how you chunked it out. There's a morning, there's an afternoon, there's an evening. Pick 1 or 2 things that would fit in that time frame that you would classify as occurring in your perfect day. Once you've got that list, again, top of mind, it doesn't, you're not writing pages and pages unless you want to, then have a think. Does this line up with what I'm actually doing? Because you might get some interesting data there. Maybe there are a few things that, hey, I'm already doing this in my life and that feels good. And that just confirms to you, okay, this is good. It aligns with something that I value. Or maybe there's a big disconnect. And if that's what you find, that also is okay. Because again, data point, you need somewhere to start. Remember, if you want to make any changes moving forward, including, hey, what I do in my day to day, I want to align more with what's important to me and what I would consider in my perfect day, then you have to get that starting off data point. So, any of this work that you're going to do in this 5 minute session in the next week is important work and it's good work. And follow along with us. Again, in the next couple episodes, we have some cool surprises, like some more interviews that we're very excited about, but we're also going to be weaving in more ways that we can look deeper at getting to know ourselves. So, until next time, Rebels.